The streets of Tulsa are quiet, but silence never lasts long in Dwight's world. A storm is coming, and the first strike will shake the city to its core. When the king returns, old enemies remember his name, and new challengers step out from the shadows. This is not just another beginning, it's a warning. Power is never safe, and neither is the man who holds it. Season 2 left the city of Tulsa standing on a razor's edge. Dwight the General Manfredi had carved out a kingdom where no one thought it was possible. With sharp moves, old-school honor, and ruthless decisions, he forced rivals to kneel and built a crew that respected his command. But even as he stood at the top, the cracks in his empire were already spreading. Loyalties were tested. Friends began to question his methods. And far away from the neon-lit streets of Tulsa, powerful eyes were watching every step he took. Now, as Season 3 opens, the weight of every choice Dwight made comes crashing back. The city he claimed is restless, full of whispers about his next move. Some see him as a savior who brought order. Others see him as a tyrant who rules with fear. And between the shadows of backroom deals and the flash of gunfire, the truth is clear: Dwight is not done fighting. And neither are those who want to take him down. In Episode 1, the calm surface begins to crack. Tulsa looks alive with bright streets, buzzing bars, and the quiet hum of business. But underneath it all, war drums are beating. The local players who once bowed their heads are starting to plot in secret. Old scores resurface, debts must be paid, and new names rise with dangerous intent. The game Dwight built so carefully is about to spin out of his control. But this is not just about the streets. Behind polished doors and government seals, the law is circling tighter than ever. Federal agents who let him slip in the past are no longer patient. They know Dwight's moves, his patterns, and his weaknesses. Every phone call, every meeting, every handshake could be the one that pulls him into their trap. The general has always played to game survival on the streets and survival in the system, but now both fronts are pressing against him with deadly force. And in the middle of it all, Dwight faces something far more dangerous than bullets or handcuffs: betrayal. The people closest to him, the ones he trusted to keep his empire strong, may not all stand by his side. A single whisper of doubt, a single deal made in secret, can shatter the fragile balance he fought to protect. Season 3 doesn't just bring back the fight for Tulsa, it opens the door to an all-out war that could destroy everything Dwight has built. Every step in Episode 1 feels like a countdown. The streets grow tense, the bars are full of watchful eyes, and even Dwight himself carries the heavy silence of a man who knows what's coming. This isn't just another season. It's the start of a new chapter, one where the crown he wears grows heavier by the minute. And every decision could be his last. The streets of Tulsa carry secrets. And Dwight knows that every corner can hide a knife. The calm after his rise to power is only an illusion, and in this new chapter, the silence becomes more dangerous than the sound of gunfire. Every ally he once trusted has started to question their place, and every rival he once defeated waits for the perfect moment to strike back. Dwight built his empire on old rules: loyalty, respect, and fear, but now the game is changing faster than he can control. Episode 1 begins by showing the thin line between victory and collapse. Dwight's presence in Tulsa is larger than life, but the enemies around him are not afraid anymore. They are smarter, more patient, and far more ruthless. New faces arrive in the city, drawn by the scent of opportunity, and they don't play by the same rules. These are men and women who do not fear the legend of the general. They come with new ideas, new weapons, and a hunger for power that makes them unpredictable. The city that Dwight once tamed is now slipping from his grasp, and every moment of hesitation becomes a weakness for others to exploit. But it isn't only the streets that turn against him. The law is closing in tighter than ever. Season 2 showed us that Dwight could dodge the system, outsmart agents, and keep one step ahead of the government's watchful eyes. In Season 3, the walls begin to close around him. Investigations dig deeper, names and faces are connected, and the thin protection he thought he had starts to fade. This time, there are no easy escapes, no hidden paths out of danger. The authorities know that bringing down Dwight Manfredi isn't just about arresting a criminal, it's about cutting the head off a growing empire before it spreads beyond Tulsa. Inside his own circle, danger grows in silence. Betrayal is no longer a distant fear, but a reality creeping closer with every meeting and every conversation. Men he trusted, men who once swore loyalty, are no longer sure of their future with him. The shine of easy money fades, and fear of prison or death begins to outweigh loyalty. In the dark corners of backrooms, whispered deals are made and new alliances form. Dwight, for all his wisdom and experience, can feel the cracks forming beneath his feet. The true test of a king is not how he seizes power, but how he keeps it. And for the first time, Dwight is beginning to realize that even his throne may not be unshakable. And then comes the shadow of the past. Old enemies who were left beaten, but not broken, rise again with vengeance in their eyes. Ghosts of New York, men who remember Dwight as both a brother and a traitor, step back into the picture. They do not forgive, and they do not forget. For them, Dwight's empire in Tulsa is nothing more than stolen glory, a prize they are determined to reclaim. What Dwight thought he had escaped by leaving New York now comes back, sharper and deadlier than ever. Season 3 makes one thing clear: Tulsa will not be his only battlefield. The tension builds like a storm. Every scene in the first episode is layered with threat, suspense, and the sense that the ground beneath Dwight is beginning to shake. He still stands tall, commanding, and unbroken, but the eyes that follow him are no longer full of fear. Some look at him with envy, others with hatred, and some with the cold calculation of those waiting for the right moment to strike. The crown he wears glitters, but it cuts deep, and every second reminds him that power always comes with a price. Yet Dwight is not a man who bows easily. Even as forces gather against him, even as betrayal creeps into his circle, his spirit remains unbroken. He is ready to fight, to adapt, to remind every rival and every agent why he is called the General. The episode sets the stage not for quiet survival, but for open war. And in this war, every choice Dwight makes will carve the path for the rest of the season. Tulsa is no longer just his city, it is the battlefield where the future of his empire will be decided. Power can build an empire, but it is people who decide whether it stands or falls. In Season 3, Episode 1, every character carries a weight heavier than before. Dwight may sit at the center of the storm, but the lives around him are shifting like pieces on a board, each with their own secrets, their own choices, and their own breaking points. This is where the story truly begins to take shape, not only through the rise of new enemies, but through the fragile bonds of those closest to him. The men and women in Dwight's circle were once united by loyalty, respect, and the promise of something greater than themselves. But with success comes greed, and with power comes fear. Some begin to ask themselves whether following Dwight is worth the risk. Others wonder if his old school ways can survive in a world that plays by new rules. Episode 1 doesn't just show us soldiers standing behind their general, it shows us cracks in the armor, doubts hidden in glances, and choices that will decide who stays loyal and who betrays. Among these faces, one stands out: the right-hand man who has been Dwight's steady shadow since the beginning. A figure hardened by the streets yet bound by respect. In this new chapter, his loyalty will be tested more than ever. Does he remain faithful to the man who gave him purpose, or does he see the storm coming and save himself before it's too late? His struggle becomes the mirror of Dwight's larger war. When the world demands change, do you stand firm or adapt to survive? On the other side of the spectrum, new faces enter the frame. Mysterious, bold, and unpredictable, they carry with them the promise of either salvation or destruction. These newcomers are not bound by the codes Dwight lives by. They move fast, strike harder, and don't believe in the honor of the old world. They look at Tulsa not as a place to respect, but as a territory to conquer. Their arrival turns every alliance into a gamble, every handshake into a risk, and every friendship into a question mark. Then there are the ghosts from Dwight's past. Old ties from New York resurface, forcing him to confront memories he buried deep. Friends who became enemies. families broken by blood feuds, promises that were never kept. These shadows are not just reminders of who he was, they are threats to everything he has become. Episode 1 teases their return in subtle but powerful ways. A message delivered at the wrong time, a face glimpsed in the crowd, a rumor whispered in a bar. For Dwight, the past is no longer behind him, it is standing right at his door, demanding a reckoning. But the heart of this section is not only betrayal or danger. It is the emotional weight carried by the characters who must decide what side they stand on. Loyalties are not just about survival. They are about identity. Who are you when the king calls? Are you his ally, his enemy, or something in between? Episode 1 places every character at a crossroads, and while some choose to fight beside him, others begin to drift into dangerous territory. Through it all, Dwight himself is revealed in a deeper light. Behind his iron voice and sharp decisions is a man torn between two worlds. The old mafia code that built him and the new city that challenges him. The family he lost and the empire he is trying to build. The silence of his own regrets and the noise of the battles he still has to fight. Episode 1 shows us not only the king, but the man beneath the crown. A man haunted by the price of power yet unwilling to give it up. The character-driven tension makes every scene burn with anticipation. It is no longer just about who controls Tulsa, it is about who Dwight can trust when the knives come out. Will his circle hold strong, or will betrayal cut him deeper than any rival ever could? Will the ghosts of New York drag him back into the wars he thought he had escaped, or will he rise above them and claim a new kind of rule? These are the questions that hang in the air, unanswered, as the first episode closes its grip around the audience. The war for Tulsa is not just fought with bullets or deals. It is fought in the hearts of those who stand beside Dwight, and in the minds of those who secretly wish to see him fall. And as episode 1 reveals, sometimes the deadliest enemy is not the one who aims a gun, it's the one who smiles as they stand by your side. Every empire is built on fragile ground. And in Season 3, Episode 1 of Tulsa King, we see just how thin that ground has become. The mood of the city shifts, and with it, the tone of the story. Tulsa no longer feels like a place Dwight can bend to his will. It feels alive, restless, and ready to devour its king. The lights of the bars and backrooms still glow, but behind them is a tension that cannot be ignored. Every street corner, every alleyway, every set of eyes carries a warning. Nothing in this city belongs to him without a fight. The air of episode 1 is thick with a sense of inevitability. You can almost feel the storm before it breaks the way a quiet room feels before glass shatters. The soundtrack of this chapter is not just the rumble of engines or the crack of gunfire. It is the slow, steady beat of time running out. Dwight knows it, his crew senses it, and even his enemies taste it in the air. There is no peace in this kingdom. There is only the pause before chaos returns. But what makes this episode more gripping is not just the threat of violence, it is the weight of choices. Season 3 begins by reminding us that power is not permanent. It must be earned, protected, and sometimes defended with blood. Dwight faces decisions that could either fortify his empire or destroy it entirely. Do you trust the man who has stood by your side for years, even as doubt flickers in his eyes? Do you strike first against enemies who have not yet revealed themselves? Do you cling to the rules that once kept you alive, or do you adapt to a new world that plays dirtier than ever before? These questions echo through the episode like a pulse, building toward the inevitable clash, and the tone is darker than before. Where past seasons balance loyalty and ambition with moments of levity, Season 3 sinks deeper into shadows. Episode 1 sets a mood that feels heavier, colder, more dangerous. The world Dwight inhabits has lost any illusions of safety. Even the quiet moments, conversations, dinners, simple exchanges are laced with tension, because we know that behind every smile lies a secret, and behind every promise lies betrayal. The violence, when it comes, is not random. It is sharp, shocking, and unforgettable. Every move is deliberate, every strike carefully chosen to leave an impact. The episode doesn't just show us a fight, it shows us a message. Dwight's rule will not go unchallenged. Rivals want his crown, the law wants his freedom, and the people closest to him may want his downfall. It is a three-sided war, and in episode 1, all sides make their presence known, and yet, even as enemies surround him, Dwight refuses to bend. His voice carries the weight of a man who has been broken before but never defeated. His steps echo with the determination of someone who knows the battlefield is everywhere, on the streets, in boardrooms, in backrooms, even in his own home. He is not a man waiting for survival. He is a man preparing for war. That resilience, that refusal to be swallowed by fear, is what makes this episode unforgettable. The closing moments of episode 1 leave an impression that lingers. The imagery is bold shadows moving across Tulsa, a city bracing itself for what comes next. Whispers of betrayal collide with the heavy footsteps of enemies arriving at the gates. And in the middle of it all stands Dwight, silent, unflinching, eyes set on the horizon. It is not just the return of a king, it is the rise of a warrior who knows the crown he wears comes with blood on his hands and blood on his doorstep. That the promise of season 3 is not survival. It is transformation. Dwight will either evolve into something greater, something more dangerous than anyone has seen before, or he will be torn apart by the forces gathering around him. Episode 1 is not just the beginning of a new season, it is the spark that lights the fire. The moment that tells us Tulsa will never be the same again. The final note is a warning, not just to his enemies but to the audience. The king has returned, but the throne is no longer secure. Every shadow hides a blade, every lie hides a doubt, and every decision carries the weight of life or death. This is not a story of comfort. It is a story of survival, revenge, and the high price of wearing the crown. And as the screen fades, one truth is left ringing in our minds: the war for Tulsa has only just begun.